The S&P 500 just closed higher by 0.9%. Micron exploded 12%. Intel surged over 8%, and the entire semiconductor sector caught fire. The VIX collapsed nearly 9%. And President Trump just slapped 50% tariffs on Canadian goods. Welcome to Invest from Zero, your daily U.S. market wrap. I'm here every single trading day to break down what happened, why it matters, and what you should be watching next. It's Tuesday, July 21st, and we have a packed show today. A massive chip rally, two major earnings beats from General Motors and 3M, new trade war escalation with Canada, and rising tensions with Iran pushing oil and gold higher. Here's what's coming up. We'll start with a deep dive into the S&P 500, then move to the NASDAQ and the Dow. After that, we'll walk through all 11 sectors one by one, so you can see exactly where the money is flowing. Then we'll spotlight the biggest individual stock movers in the mega-cap space, both gainers and losers, with our stock of the day getting a full 30-day chart review. We'll check in on a macro dashboard. That means VIX, Treasury yields, gold, and oil. And we'll close with 3 specific things to watch before tomorrow's opening bell. If you're new here, this is the show that covers the U.S. stock market every single trading day. No fluff, no hype, just data, analysis, and context. Hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Let's get into it. Let's start with the benchmark, the S&P 500. Today, the index closed at 7,509.20. That's higher by 0.89%, or roughly 66 points on the day. Yesterday's close was 7,443.28, so we're looking at a solid gain. And importantly, this snaps a 3-session losing streak. Dip buyers stepped in aggressively, especially in semiconductor names. For the week so far, the S&P is still down about 0.8%, but today's reversal is exactly what bulls needed to see. The semiconductor sector gauge was up over 5% today, and that strength pulled the broader market higher. Of the roughly 66 S&P 500 companies that have reported Q2 earnings so far, nearly 88% have beaten bottom-line estimates. That is a strong beat rate, and it's giving investors confidence. To put today's 66-point move in perspective, the S&P 500 averages about a 20 to 30-point daily move in comm markets. Today was well above average, and breadth was solid with 7 of 11 sectors finishing green. Now let's move to the other 2 major indices. The NASDAQ Composite, which is heavily weighted toward technology and growth stocks, gained 1.29% today, closing at 25,837. The semiconductor rally was the engine here. Micron Technology surged 12%, pushing its market cap back above $1 trillion. Intel jumped over 8%. AMD was up 8%. Supermicro Computer gained 7%, and Cerebras Systems popped nearly 18%. Strong AI-related export data from Taiwan and South Korea reinforced optimism that the AI infrastructure build-out still has legs. NVIDIA also rose 2% after announcing a strategic stake in Nebius, which itself soared nearly 19%. The NASDAQ led the S&P by a wide margin today, which is exactly what bulls want to see. Moving to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it finished higher by 0.74% at 52,225. The Dow got a boost from 2 strong earnings reports this morning. 3M shares jumped over 7% after beating Q2 estimates with earnings of $2.40 per share versus the $2.24 expected. General Motors rose nearly 5% after reporting earnings of $3.57 per share, beating estimates by 28 cents, and the company raised its full-year profit guidance. All 3 indices are moving in the same direction, which shows broad conviction. Now, let's get into the sector breakdown. This is one of the most important parts of the show because it tells you exactly where the money is flowing. Today, 7 of 11 sectors finished in the green and 4 in the red, leading all 11 sectors by a mile. Technology up 2.9%, driven entirely by the semiconductor superstorm. This was a day where chip stocks alone carried the entire market higher. In second place, energy at nearly 1%, getting a tailwind from oil prices rising on Iran tensions. Third, healthcare at plus 0.63%, with United Health leading the charge. The middle of the pack, industrials plus 0.3%, boosted by 3M's earnings beat and Caterpillar's strength. Consumer discretionary plus 0.23%, materials plus 0.14%, and financials barely positive at plus 0.12. Now the laggards. Utilities came in at negative 0.04%. Real estate at negative 0.07. Communication dropped 0.69%. And bringing up the rear, consumer staples finishing down nearly 1% as Walmart slid. The spread between the best and worst sector today is 3.8 percentage points. That is a widespread, classic risk-on behavior. Money is flowing away from defensive names and into high beta growth. I always say, follow the sectors. They tell you the story before the headline does. Now let's look at today's biggest movers in the megacap space. Starting with the number one gainer. Intel, ticker Intel, absolutely surged today, up 8.64%, closing at $105.45. For a megacap stock, an 8+% move in a single day is massive. We're talking about billions of dollars in market cap change in just a few hours. The catalyst here is the broader semiconductor recovery. Remember, chip stocks were hammered last week on fears around new EDA export restrictions. But this week, fresh export data from Taiwan and South Korea showed AI-related chip shipments are still booming. And that completely flipped the narrative. Investors piled back into beaten-down names. Intel was one of the hardest hit last week, so it had the most room to bounce. When you see this kind of snapback, it tells you the sell-off was overdone. But here's the thing to watch. If you own Intel, congratulations on a great day. If you don't, be careful about chasing. The question is whether this is the start of a sustained recovery or just a dead cat bounce within a larger downtrend. The earnings reports coming this week from Alphabet and Tesla will tell us a lot about whether AI spending is truly accelerating. Rounding out the top 5 gainers. Number 2, AMD, up 8.1%, closing at $544.43. AMD rode the same semiconductor wave as Intel. When the chip sector moves this hard, all boats rise. Number 3, Oracle, up 4.7%, closing at $127.05. Oracle has been steadily building its cloud and AI infrastructure business, and today's risk-on mood lifted it. Number 4, United Health, up 3.5%, closing at $436.35, helping healthcare finish as the third best sector. Number 5, Caterpillar, up 3%, closing at $889.97. Cat benefited from the strong industrial earnings theme after 3 minutes, and GM both crushed expectations this morning. Notice something here. We have chip stocks, enterprise tech, healthcare, and industrials. That is genuine breadth, not just one narrow theme carrying the day. Now, let's flip to the losers. The biggest decliner today, Adobe, ticker Adobe, dropping 3.23% to $227.16. In a market where the NASDAQ was up 1.3%, falling 3% stands out. Adobe has been struggling to convince investors that its AI monetization strategy is working fast enough, and on a day when pure-play chip and AI infrastructure names soared, software names like Adobe got left behind. The rest of today's biggest decliners. Boeing dropped 2.2% to $204.80. Boeing continues to face headwind from supply chain issues, and the new Canada tariffs could add pressure on aerospace parts. Salesforce dropped 2.1% to $170.06. Another software name struggling on a day when hardware and infrastructure dominated. MasterCard dropped 1.7% to $538.30 as payment processors face concerns about consumer spending if tariff-driven inflation picks up. And Walmart dropped 1.6% to $110.39. Consumer staples were the worst sector today, and Walmart's decline reflects the broader rotation out of defensive names and into growth. The average decline among our bottom 5 is 2.2%. But here's what I want you to notice. The losers are concentrated in software, consumer, and payments, while the winners are in semiconductors, industrials, and healthcare. That tells you this is a rotation story, not a sell-everything story. Money is moving, not leaving. Time for our Stock of the Day segment. Today, that honor goes to Intel, ticker Intel. Let's put this stock under the microscope. Intel surged 8.6% today, closing at $105.45. But Intel wasn't even the biggest chip stock mover today. Micron Technology exploded 12%, pushing its market cap back above $1 trillion. Micron reported a 37% year-over-year revenue increase in its most recent quarter, driven by massive demand for high-bandwidth memory. The company has said it's completely sold out on HBM production for both 2026 and 2027. That kind of visibility is rare in semiconductors. Supermicro gained 7%. Cerebrus Systems jumped nearly 18%. And Nebius, after NVIDIA announced a strategic stake in the company, soared nearly 19%. Now let's zoom out on Intel specifically. Over the last 30 trading days, the stock has ranged from a low of $95.04 all the way up to a high of $140.94. That's a 48% trading range in just 1 month. At today's close, the stock sits about 11% above its 30-day low, with significant room to the upside before hitting that $141 resistance level. Intel reports earnings next week, and that will be the real test of whether this bounce has substance. As always, this is not a buy or sell recommendation. It's just data and context. Now, let's pull up the macro dashboard. This is where we check the pulse of the broader financial system. First up, the VIX. Wall Street's fear gauge collapsed to 17.1, falling 8.6% in a single session. A nearly 9% drop in the VIX tells you fear is evaporating fast. Investors went from cautious yesterday to confident today. But remember, extreme complacency can be just as dangerous as extreme fear. Next, the bond market. The 10-year Treasury yield ticked up to 4.63%, still above that key 4.5% level that puts pressure on valuations. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Gold surged 2.9% today, trading at $4,124 per ounce. Why? 2 words: geopolitical risk. President Trump declared that Iran will, quote, pay for the deaths of American service members, and he just announced 50% tariffs on Canadian goods, targeting electrical equipment, machinery, wine, and even hockey sticks. Energy, potash, and critical minerals were exempted, but this is the steepest tariff action since the Supreme Court struck down his broader tariff plan earlier this year. Canadian Prime Minister Carney has vowed to intensify trade negotiations. Crude oil gained 2.4%, sitting at $85.25 per barrel, with Brent crude above $88. The Iran situation and Middle East instability continue to put a floor under oil prices. Putting it all together, the macro picture is genuinely complicated. Stocks rallied, but gold and oil also rallied. That combination, risk-on in equities and safe haven demand in commodities simultaneously, tells you there are serious cross-currents under the surface. Stay alert. All right, let's close out with my watch list for tomorrow. These are the 3 things I'm tracking most closely heading into the next trading session. Pay attention, because this is where you get your edge for tomorrow. Number 1, Alphabet reports earnings tomorrow after the bell. This is arguably the most important earnings report of the week. Google's cloud and AI spending will tell us whether the semiconductor rally we saw today has fundamental backing or if it's just momentum. If Alphabet beats and raises guidance on AI infrastructure, expect chip stocks to gap higher. If they disappoint, today's rally could reverse fast. Number 2. Watch Canada's response to the 50% tariffs. Prime Minister Carney has promised retaliation, and any escalation could hit industrials and materials stocks hard. Companies like Caterpillar and 3M have significant Canadian exposure. Number 3. Oil is now at $85 with Brent above 88. If Iran tensions escalate further, we could see oil push toward 90, and that would change the inflation calculus entirely. The Fed is watching energy prices closely, and a sustained move higher in oil could delay rate cuts. These are the setups and the risks. Write them down, set your alerts, and be ready when the opening bell rings. And that is your complete U.S. market wrap for Tuesday, July 21st. Today we covered the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow Jones. We broke down all 11 sectors, went through the biggest movers both up and down, gave our stock of the day Intel a full 30-day chart review, checked the macro dashboard with VIX, bonds, gold, and oil, and finished with 3 things to watch for tomorrow's session. If you found this valuable, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell so you get these episodes every single trading day. Share this with someone who's trying to learn about the markets. Drop a comment below and let me know, are you bullish or bearish heading into tomorrow? I read every single comment and try to respond to as many as I can. Remember, nothing in this video is financial advice. I'm just sharing data, analysis, and my perspective. Always do your own research or consult a licensed financial advisor before making investment decisions. I'll be back tomorrow with another full breakdown. Until then, invest smart, invest early, and invest consistently. This is Invest from Zero. Good night.